I'd be a chemist, but I'm an amateur chemist, and I went in my basement. I blew up close to 1,000 mason jars, playing with different things, tracking down hunches. And I think if I was a real chemist, I wouldn't have found the solutions I did, but I made some mistakes, wound up with the core of the technology we now use today. And that's the very short version.
I'd love to hear a 90-second, who are you and what does your company do?
So my name is Tom Lix. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Cleveland Whiskey. We are pretty much a technology company. We focus on the technologies we can bring in. We've got a couple of patents, a lot of carefully guarded trade secrets, and we do everything from use other woods to give our whiskeys some unique flavors that nobody else can really do. And we're also making some concentrates for export that the technology allows us to do. And I think that's the most exciting thing we're doing right.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it feels like, bourbons and whiskeys and all that sort of stuff. It's been around for a while. So how do you start to kind of think about like, hey, I think we can do it a different way, or I think we can shake this up. Like, where's that origin story around like, there's a different way to do this?
I think it's because I'm just really sort of an impatient person. And, I wasn't in the industry, but I read this article about the growing middle class in places like China and India and around the world. And this particular author, they talked about how people were buying affordable luxuries. And as I thought about that, I said, it's not just affordable luxuries, it's conspicuous affordable luxuries, things that they can show off to their friends. So I did a little research and saw that consumption of imported whiskeys into those countries was sort of growing at the same rate the increase of the population. I said, there's an opportunity there. If I had a better attention span, I'd be a chemist, but I'm an amateur chemist. And I went in my basement. I blew up close to 1,000 mason jars, playing with different things, tracking down hunches. And I think if I was a real chemist, I wouldn't have found the solutions I did, but I made some mistakes, wound up with the core of the technology we now use today. And that's the very short version.
Yeah, that's amazing. And do you fight like a purist like mindset at all? Like, are you out there like, online fighting trolls who are like, that's not how it should be made or anything like that? Do you have that going on in your life?
So early on, and you may have to edit this a little bit, early on, we had been doing all sorts of blind taste tests with our product. We were doing really well against brands like Knob Creek and just a series of things and doing really well. And this one reviewer, he picked us up. He was a classic, writes for all the classic whiskey magazines, and was very sort of inbred society, it seems. And he had a 3-paragraph review. First started with this rant and rave and how it was heresy, how it was totally wrong. It was sacrilege to use science and technology in the creation of something that was so perfect, and it had been perfected over the generations.
Yeah.
Second paragraph said, but it doesn't matter because it's impossible to use science and technology to somehow improve that process. You're not going to make it any better.
Right.
And third paragraph started with, I'm still going to give it a fair and impartial review, which of course I didn't believe. And as I read through it, the summary was, he ended it by saying he thought our product, which had been doing really well, beating these other brands in blind taste tests, and we'd run over 3,600 of them. So I knew we
Wow.
weren't just drinking our own Kool-Aid. But he said our product, he thought it tasted like sheep piss. Now,
Okay.
now I posted it on Facebook. Immediately, the first response was, how the hell would he know what sheep piss tastes like?
Yeah.
Another
Very,
response was,
very
if he's been
specific.
drinking that, he shouldn't be allowed to judge any of these products. I mean, so we've had that pushback. I think over time, as we moved away from just being able to produce things faster, but also make things that were really radically different in terms of using other woods, we've gotten some grudging acceptance from some of the traditionalists, but they're still not there. We find that pretty much only in the US and in the UK. In Asia, it doesn't matter, other places around the world. And in some places, it's like, that's technology. That's great. We're
Right.
enthusiastic about it.
Sure. So how do you protect the IP of this? I know you mentioned it right in the very beginning. So like, how do you do that in this space? So as investors are getting into this, they
Yeah.
know that, they're actually investing in something that can't be reproduced and stuff.
Well, investors wanted to see a couple patents, so we did them.
hmm
Knowing that patents are simply a guidebook for people who are better funded to copy your work and do it,
Sure.
those patents really are take you in the wrong direction.
hmm
We've got some very closely guarded trade secrets, that are all sort of parsed out, and people know parts of them. I'm really the only one who knows all of them, and formulas are locked up in a safety deposit box in case I get hit by a bus. So, we do lots of other things too, like we've got gauges and indicators on all of our equipment. And I saw that very early on. We had people sort of coming in, and they would tuck their phone, at their waist, and they're trying to take pictures of the readings on these things and trying to figure it out. So we've all made adjustments to them. We've got our own calibration set on those readings. So if it reads a certain pressure, that tells us something. That's not the real pressure, but it helps us sort of
Interesting.
manage the process. And if somebody wants to use those measurements, they're welcome to, because it's not going to give them what we have. So
So let's talk about sort of distribution and like what does that world look like for you in terms of shipping bottles into retail? Like
yeah.
where can you find Cleveland whiskey
Well, I
right now?
mean, we've done all the classic things, and so we're in. I think we're in like 16 states, but there's a handful that
Hmm.
where we really have good distribution, like Ohio, of course, which is where we're
Hmm.
based, but also New Hampshire, Massachusetts, a couple of other places. But as we all know, the whiskey industry is down right now. I mean,
Hmm.
it's struggling here in the U.S. It's struggling in the U.S. It's been shrinking, and we don't really know what's going to happen to it long term. I mean, if we're being honest with
Yeah.
ourselves, but it is growing in places overseas like India. And we've made a big investment in creating a company in India that we own part of, in developing a concentrate using our technology that allows us to work in this IMFL space, which is Indian
Hmm.
made foreign liquor.
Hmm.
Everyone may know this. I mean, it's the largest population in the world, and they happen to drink whiskey. So it's
Hmm.
also the largest whiskey consuming country in the
Hmm.
world, and it is growing. So I
Yeah.
see our future in terms of, again, using our technology to help us do things unique and different.
Hmm.
We've created a concentrate that allows them to really it's very cost effective against the Scotch whiskey that they're using now. We can do it with American malt. We can do it with,
Hmm.
I was just in India a couple of weeks ago at a show, the first time I've been there, came back with an order for, $560,000 plus. And I've got other ones I'm just replying to now and finishing
Hmm.
the proposals.
Hmm.
I think we are at a game-changing point in our company. We had been classic, going out to
Hmm.
distribution, getting in
Yeah.
all the states,
Hmm.
paying all the fees and the permits and going through all that. And I think that while we'll continue doing that, our growth will come from India and Africa and Southeast Asia. And
Yeah.
we're uniquely positioned to do that.
Now, when you're looking at countries like that to get into, are they at a point right now where maybe they're into I'll just Jack Daniels, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the big brand. Everybody knows
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and
Right.
has that sort of boutique distillery type of bourbon and whiskeys getting just starting to get into that world, or has
They
it
are,
always been there?
yeah, they are just starting. I think of a lot of my colleagues in the space, but the problem is it's really expensive to bring your product in. Number one, your quantities aren't that big. The tariffs and the taxes and the permits are horrible.
Hmm.
And right now they're even worse. But just under standard normal conditions, they're really difficult. So if you're trying to bring in a craft product, you've got so many things against it, and there may be a small market for it, but I don't think that's the route to go. We fully explored that. What we found is we've got to come in very differently. We've got to come in with something that can reduce the amount of tariffs and taxes coming in. So we ship far less quantity
Mm,
at a good margin for us, but also at a cost savings when it's finally diluted when you get into India. And then India is sort of our base then for moving into Southeast Asia and Africa, because they
right.
do a lot of business and sell a lot of this Indian made foreign liquor, this category, which is the
Hmm.
largest category of consumption in India.
Wow. Wow. Interesting. I want to talk a little bit about, because I know that you just upgraded the facilities, if I'm not mistaken. Let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about just facilities and maybe where you are in Cleveland and the downtown area and stuff.
Sure. So we just moved, we've been here now like a year and a half or so, into a historic building that we've had to really pretty much totally rebuild, and we're not done yet.
Hmm.
We own two buildings now in an area called the Flats. It's right on the river, beautiful location, beautiful views. And we're rebuilding this historic building for the distillery. We went from less than 5,000 square foot footprint in our old building. We've now got about 45,000 square feet. And we also upgraded. It was a great time for us to upgrade all our production technology. So we've increased our capacity by about fourfold right away. I'm working to move it into sort of a 20x area with, modest CapEx investments. So yeah, it's a great, I mean, ultimately, and we're doing some events there. We've got some nice
Nice.
event space we're building out, and there's a lot of construction going on in the area because the Cleveland Cavaliers, right, our neighbor on this area of the flats, is building a new Cavs training facility, and the
Mm,
Cleveland Clinic is building a sports medicine or sports therapy facility there as well.
nice.
And there's rumors of other things going in this area. I think we were sort of the first entry into this area of the flats. It had been relatively undeveloped, but
Hmm.
I think it's going to be phenomenal for us.
Yeah. I want to move over a little bit to like, how do you guys determine risk? What is risk right now in your space? Maybe outside of the US, potentially declining a little bit, but just how do you think about it? And then how do you sort of adjust and pivot as you're starting to sort of read the tea leaves a little bit about your industry?
Uh, I think it's interesting, and I think this is a tough one because with the industry changing, traditional distillers, they've got a lot of inventory. They either have in rick houses, which
Hmm.
is evaporating every day and, risking fire and all that stuff. But they've tied up a lot of inventory based on predictions of where the market was going to be,
Mm,
in this year and the following year and the following year. And they've got to make product now and put it in a barrel and let it sit for whether it's 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years.
yeah.
That's a big risk, a huge risk.
Yeah.
We are probably the only just in time manufacturer of whiskey in the world
Hmm.
because of the process that we do. It's not entirely just in time, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And that eliminates a lot of our risk.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. How about brand? How do you sort of think about what you do with branding in a space that is heavily branded? I'm a part of a bourbon club and a whiskey club, and I get something new every month, and you're like, oh, look at that label, and I think I just got one with a superhero all over it. I'm like, all right,
Did you
they got
really? Oh, that's
yeah.
too
It's
funny.
like, all right, they got superheroes now on these. So like, how do you sort of think about this,
Yeah.
just as a company? How do you guys think about it?
Uh, so when we started the Cleveland whiskey brand, we did a lot of research on what Cleveland meant, not only in this country, but around the world, and
Hmm.
actually got some surprising results in terms of entrepreneurship and, blue collar, white collar mix. I mean, it was all positive. I wasn't originally from Cleveland. I spent most of my professional life around Boston.
Mm,
And so it was a little surprising to me. I'm a great advocate of Cleveland at this point. But
hmm.
when we started the brand, it was really a way to demonstrate to the people that I thought would ultimately acquire us that they would buy whiskey that was made in an untraditional manner. And I mean, we get our tires kicked, fairly regularly from the big guys. I think the challenge is that they've sort of made this mystique of I was going to say mistake, but mystique is the word I wanted, about, that it takes time and you have to have patience and all this other stuff. And the reality is that you really don't. But they've
Hmm.
got that in the consumer's mind. That's been a tough one for them. And I think that's been tough for them to reconcile with the fact that if they incorporated our technology, the return on investment could be huge for them,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's a different thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. I'm
Hmm.
sure at some point somebody will do it, and if not,
Yeah.
we're going to just be growing by leaps and bounds here. So I think
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah. Let's move over to maybe capital raising. I mean, I've known you as a serial equity crowdfunder. I've watched you do, I think, a couple raises now on WeFunder. You have one currently right now. How did you sort of navigate and get into just thinking about crowdfunding, number one? And then two, what is the raise right now for in your growth and your expansions right now?
So before, I mean, Kickstarter was around, but before equity crowdfunding was around, I was thinking about what again, I said I was from Boston originally. I remember when the Boston Celtics sold stock in the
Mm-hmm.
team for the first time, and that
Yep.
was sort of unheard of. This was a long time
Yep.
ago, and how all the fans just loved it. Everybody wanted to have a share,
Right.
and it
Yep.
guaranteed that the Celtics going forward would have a market with all these people because they would come to all the games, they would talk about
Mm-hmm.
everything, they would
Mm-hmm.
become advocates. So I was a big fan of having your customers own part of the company. I also worked in the software space for a while where that type of thing was pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
So when it became available, we were ready for it. And I think we
Yeah.
were one of the first 10 that
Mm-hmm.
actually did an equity crowd raising back in 2016. And I love it because right now we have, I don't know, about 1,700 small investors that own parts of this company. And they
Mm-hmm.
There are advocates, there are evangelists, and they come to our events and they tell other people and they gift our product. I think it's phenomenal for them.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the least expensive way to raise money, but I think ultimately what you get is not only raising money, but raising your profile and having more people share in what you're doing.
Right. Right.
We do have another equity raise now in process. We did a little test run of it back in April just to establish market valuation and everything
Hmm.
else. And then we relaunched again relatively recently. Part of that now is to build the capacity for what I believe will be our future is the Asian connection, Indian connection, but
Mm-hmm.
also to finish the work we're doing on rehabbing this building in this area.
Gotcha.
There's still when we got this rundown building, we had to sort of stabilize it. We had to make a tremendous amount of investment in terms of electric and plumbing and all the infrastructure that was
Mm-hmm.
necessary. But there's still event space I want to do. I need windows to go in. I mean, there's a lot of stuff yet to go to get to the vision that I ultimately have of this company, it's going to take more money.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, for people who have never invested in an alcohol brand or bourbons or whiskeys or just have never invested in it,
Yeah.
like what does this world look like in terms of potential returns? Not just for your campaign. I'm just talking about in general. Are these long tail? Are they never happen? They've got good returns. I mean, what does the world look like for an investor in this space?
Well, today I think it's tough. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
to be perfectly frank about it, I think
Yeah.
again the industry's down. I
Mm-hmm.
think there isn't there for a while there was a lot of hype over buying whiskey casks and doing investing in companies and there was a cool factor. Gee, I own part of this whiskey company. That's sort of cool. And today, I think if we weren't sort of this technology company and we're only just a standard craft distiller, I'm not sure it's the best bet for you right now if you were
Mm-hmm.
really thinking about being in the space.
Yeah.
But that's part of why we differentiate ourselves. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that there are opportunities, but you've got to focus on where they are and what they are. And it's got to be something special. It can't just
Yeah.
be, okay, we're another craft brand. We're another product that we're going to struggle to put on the shelves,
Mm-hmm.
another product that you're going to compete with 100 other craft
Right.
brands. I think that space has become very crowded.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. There's lots of good products. There's some really awful products out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
that's the craft industry.
Yeah.
And the big guys now are also suffering. You see some layoffs going on with them
Mm-hmm.
because, again, they had to put so much away in the rickhouses to
Mm-hmm.
plan for what they thought was going to be continued growth.
Right.
And now, whether it's just simply a post-COVID correction or the influence of, I think it's overstated, but the numbers aren't that big yet, the sort of non-drinking, low
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, no alcohol thing.
Yep.
But the whiskey industry has seen ups and downs through, the generations. And right now it's a tough one. But I'm very, very positive, and obviously I'm biased, but I'm very, very positive about where we're going
Yeah.
and what we're doing and I'm looking at my travel schedule, and it's all overseas trips.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's the number one bottleneck you typically have to work through on production for what you guys do?
So, well, I don't know if it's a bottleneck, but whatever. Our process has over the last few years gotten to a point where it's pretty much a 24-hour process.
Okay.
Whether we're making a concentrate, whether we're maturing and finishing with a wood like sugar maple or hickory or apple or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, it takes about 24 hours. And the size of my batches are relatively small because I've got to deal with relatively high pressures and vacuums. And as I enlarge the size of those vessels, the pressure issues become more and more uh,
Mm-hmm.
troubling, let's say.
Yeah.
So, so capacity is an issue, and I can build
Mm-hmm.
more capacity. It's scalable, but that all takes money.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things we've been working on is reducing our cycles and the way we do it and changing the parameters of that finishing process. So that I think we're on the verge of bringing the cycles down to about 7.5 hours as opposed to 24, which means I can start adding shifts without a capex expense. And that's phenomenal for us. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a really big deal. So capacity's always been an issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. How do you sort of think about customer growth, or what are you measuring as like milestones that you're trying to hit? Just how do you sort of stand back and look at the company and go, these are our big milestones we want to hit to prove growth is happening for us?
I think it's tough because I think that things are moving so quickly. In one area of the space, things are dropping. And in other areas of the space, like, in India and Southeast Asia, they're increasing. So I think
Right.
right now we're focusing more on our pivot and moving into those markets. And we're trying to maintain what we have in the US, but we're no longer investing to try to grow it. Now's not a
Mm,
time. I mean, ultimately, I want to grow it, but at the same time, you have to choose what investments you make. And investing in growth during a time when the industry is contracting just doesn't make any sense. So for us, it's really the number of customers I can get overseas in the IMFL market, because
hmm
once I sell them in, I will continue selling to them over and over because it's a component of the whiskey that they put on the market. So right now, the only metric I look at is how many contracts can we bring in.
mm,
And we made this one trip. We branded a couple. I think there's more coming. The hours before this podcast, I was sending emails to all the
hmm
people that I met at some of these trade shows and
Sure.
talking about what we can do and how we can reduce costs, and they can make a better product.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
I sort of didn't answer your
Yeah.
question, Jeff. I
Yeah, no,
know.
I get it. Yeah, no, no, it's a good answer. I mean, I can see how you're structuring it and thinking about growth and what you're measuring. I mean, it seems different than just bottles shipped to
Yeah.
retail, right? Just
Yeah. I mean,
hey,
obviously I pay attention to cost of goods sold as well,
hmm
because I'm trying to be competitive in all the markets we're in, and, managing that during the time when you've got to deal with tariff costs
yeah,
and other increases in costs. I mean, everything is going up. So managing that and managing our pricing is something we keep a really good eye on too.
yeah. As a veteran and entrepreneur and just running business and companies, how do you not get too high or too low through all the stuff we've just talked about? How do you sort of stay even keel on a sort of a personal level of just as
Well,
you're
it's
navigating this?
interesting that you use the word even keel, because I have two sailboats, and one of them, and I'm restoring both of them, and one of them I'm preparing for a solo transatlantic trip. So I work on that, and that's sort of my therapy. That's my wife calls it my mistress. But working on those boats and doing the epoxy work and the woodwork and everything else and
hmm
planning things and drawing stuff out, I think that helps me. That helps me a lot.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So if people want to dive in, learn a little bit more, check out stuff, where should we send them? Obviously, we're going to send them to WeFunder, but just where else could they dive into your world?
I mean, we've had a lot of news articles say, I mean, you could always just do a Google search on us,
Okay.
frankly. You might want to go to LinkedIn and find out a little bit more about me and what I've done. And the benefit of growing older is that you have a long resume. So, take a look at who I am. But then obviously go to WeFunder, and, there you have the classic things, the business plan and everything
Yeah.
else. Although even there, even though some of that is only dated a month or two ago, as we are rapidly moving into India, it's going to become out of date, but only in a very
Yeah.
positive way.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, all my listeners out there, you guys know I put all the links in the show notes, so please go check this out. Tom, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. Always I've been watching you since 2016. We've chatted many
Yep.
times, and
Yeah.
I love what you guys are working on. As a Detroit guy to Cleveland, I think we're some of the same blood here, right? It's a gray
Yeah.
skies for the next 6 months. So
And I think there's
yeah.
great things that are happening in cities like Detroit and Cleveland. So,
No, there totally is. Yeah,
yeah,
there is this. You just see it. You see all these little pockets popping up, and yeah, it is getting back to maybe what it was in the '60s and
I know.
'70s and '50s when you had all this manufacturing there. And we have waterfronts, right? So you have
Yeah,
these
we have
downtowns.
fresh water, which is,
Yep.
that's a really big deal and will
Cold.
become more and more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 Well, Tom, again, I'll let you get back to it. Appreciate you taking time out of your day, and all my listeners, go check out Cleveland Whiskey and what they're working on. Thanks so
My
much.
pleasure. Thanks, Jeff.